Aita for refusing to give up my spot on the only available lifeboat during a cruise emergency? Let me take you through one of the most surreal and harrowing experiences of my life. I'm 34F, and I recently had what was supposed to be a dream vacation, a luxurious cruise around the Caribbean. I had saved up for years for this trip, and everything had gone perfectly until one fateful night when disaster struck. This is the story of that night and the difficult decision I had to make, which led to an intense debate about morality and self-preservation. The cruise started out like any other vacation you'd dream about. The ship was a grand, floating palace with everything you could possibly want: fine dining, endless entertainment, and beautiful ocean views. I was traveling solo, looking forward to some relaxation and a break from my stressful job. The first few days were blissful. I'd spend my mornings lounging by the pool, my afternoons exploring the various ports of call, and my evenings enjoying world-class entertainment and dining. It was on the fourth night that things took a turn for the worse. I had just finished a lovely dinner at the ship's elegant main restaurant and decided to call it a night early. I was looking forward to some much-needed rest in my comfortable cabin. Little did I know, that night was going to turn into a nightmare. It was around 11 p.m. when I was jolted awake by the sound of alarms blaring throughout the ship. My first thought was that it was some kind of drill or maybe a malfunction in the ship's alarm system. I quickly threw on some clothes and headed out into the corridor, where I saw people milling about, some looking confused and others clearly alarmed. One of the crew members hurried down the hall, shouting instructions for everyone to return to their cabins and put on their life jackets. The gravity of the situation started to sink in. The ship's captain came over the PA system, his voice calm but urgent. He explained that the ship had hit a hidden reef and had sustained significant damage. We were instructed to proceed to our designated muster stations where we would be given further instructions. As I made my way to my muster station, I could feel my heart racing. The atmosphere was tense, with people whispering anxiously to each other and the occasional shriek of a child or the worried murmur of a parent. The ship's crew was doing their best to keep everyone calm and organized, but the fear and uncertainty were palpable. Upon reaching my muster station, I was relieved to see that the crew was efficiently organizing everyone. I was assigned to Lifeboat Group A, which was one of the first groups to be called. The crew was moving with purpose, guiding us to our designated lifeboats. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that this was a drill, and everything would be fine. The lifeboats were being loaded in an orderly fashion. The ship's safety procedures were well practiced, and there was a clear system in place. Each lifeboat had a limited number of seats, and they were being filled according to the order of the muster groups. I had paid extra for a cabin with a view, and I was now appreciating that extra space as we waited our turn. As I was waiting, I saw the crew handling a variety of situations: people with medical issues needing special assistance, elderly passengers needing extra help, and families trying to stay together. The crew was managing everything as smoothly as possible under the circumstances. Just as I was about to board the lifeboat assigned to my group, I noticed a commotion a few feet away. A woman, whom I would later come to know as Sarah, was frantically waving her arms and talking loudly. She was clearly distressed and seemed to be pleading with anyone who would listen. Her voice was rising in pitch, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Sarah approached me directly, her eyes wide with panic. She was clearly in a state of hysteria, and I could see that she was clutching a crumpled piece of paper, her boarding pass, I presumed. She was shouting over the noise of the evacuation. "Please, you have to help me. I need to get on this lifeboat," she cried. I pulled off my noise-canceling headphones, trying to understand what was going on. "I'm sorry, but I have to get on this lifeboat. This is my assigned spot," I explained calmly. Sarah's pleas only grew louder. "You don't understand. I'm separated from my children. They're already on this lifeboat, and I need to be with them. Please, I'm begging you. You have to let me on." At this point, I noticed her children, two young kids, maybe around 8 and 10, sitting in the lifeboat. They looked scared and bewildered, and it was clear they were frightened and alone. My heart went out to them, but I was also aware of the reality of the situation. Sarah's behavior was becoming increasingly frantic. She was no longer just asking, she was demanding, and her desperation was turning into aggression. She started pointing at me and accusing me of being selfish and uncaring. Her voice was now raised, drawing the attention of other passengers and the crew. "How can you be so heartless?" she shouted. "I'm a mother. How can you just stand there and deny me the chance to be with my kids? This is so unfair." I tried to remain composed. "I understand that you're worried about your children, but I've been assigned this lifeboat, and it's crucial that everyone follows the evacuation order. If I give up my spot, it could cause chaos and delay the process for everyone." But Sarah was not in the mood for reason. She continued her tirade, her voice growing louder and more accusatory. "This is ridiculous. I'm not asking for a favor, I'm asking to be with my children. This is an emergency. How can you be so cruel?" The commotion was causing a ripple effect. Other passengers were starting to take notice, some casting sympathetic looks in Sarah's direction, while others seemed to be becoming more annoyed with her behavior. The crew members were trying to maintain order but were clearly having difficulty with Sarah's escalating demands. One of the senior crew members, a calm and composed woman in her early 40s, stepped in to address the situation. She approached Sarah and me, her expression serious but not unkind. She took Sarah aside, away from the growing crowd. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down," the crew member said firmly. "We're doing everything we can to ensure everyone gets to safety. You'll be on a lifeboat soon, but right now, you need to follow the instructions and let us handle the situation." Sarah's cries continued, but she was now talking to the crew member rather than directly at me. The crew member listened patiently and then began explaining the logistics of the evacuation process. She assured Sarah that her children were being cared for and that they would not be left alone. Sarah was not placated. She kept insisting that her situation was different and that she deserved special consideration. But the crew member maintained her composure, reiterating that the process had to be followed to ensure everyone's safety. As the crew member spoke with Sarah, another crew member came over to check on me. He confirmed that I was in the right and assured me that the situation was being handled appropriately. I was grateful for the support, but the whole experience was deeply unsettling. Despite the crew member's best efforts, Sarah's agitation did not subside. She continued to argue loudly, even after being asked to calm down. Her behavior was causing a disruption, and it was clear that her insistence on her special circumstances was starting to create a dangerous precedent. The crew, now visibly frustrated, had to make a difficult decision. They determined that Sarah's behavior was hindering the evacuation process and creating a safety risk. They decided to remove her from the immediate vicinity to prevent further chaos. The senior crew member returned to the group, accompanied by a second crew member. They asked Sarah to gather her belongings and follow them to a different area. Sarah was still shouting as she was escorted away, but the crew remained firm and professional. As she was led away, the atmosphere in the muster station shifted. Passengers were relieved that the situation was under control, but many were shaken by the drama. The crew quickly refocused on the task at hand, and the evacuation process resumed. Finally, it was my turn to board the lifeboat. The process was smooth and orderly, with the crew ensuring that everyone was seated and properly secured. I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt for not being able to help Sarah, but I also knew that following the protocol was essential for everyone's safety. Once we were in the lifeboat, the crew member assigned to us continued to keep us informed. They assured us that the situation on the ship was under control and that the crew was doing everything possible to manage the crisis. The lifeboat was lowered into the water, and we began the wait for the all-clear signal. As we drifted away from the ship, I looked back at the vessel and felt a deep sense of relief mixed with sadness. It was unsettling to think about everything that had happened and the uncertainty of the situation. But I was grateful to be safe and to be in the company of fellow passengers who were sharing the same concerns. Once we were safely back on land, the cruise company arranged transportation and accommodations for all passengers. The crisis had been managed effectively, and thankfully, no one was seriously injured. The company offered support and counseling services for those affected by the traumatic experience. Sarah and her children were among the last passengers to disembark. The sight of them was somber. Sarah's earlier outburst had not won her any favors among the other passengers. Most people were just relieved to be off the ship and to have made it through the ordeal. In the days following the incident, I had time to reflect on everything that happened. I spoke with some of the fellow passengers who had witnessed the events. Many were supportive, understanding the necessity of following evacuation procedures. A few expressed sympathy for Sarah's situation but agreed that her behavior had jeopardized the safety of everyone on board. The cruise company reached out to all passengers with an official apology and an explanation of the events. They provided additional compensation and offered a discount on future cruises as a goodwill gesture. They also detailed the steps taken to handle the emergency, reassuring everyone that safety protocols were followed and that all crew members had acted professionally under extremely challenging circumstances. The experience taught me a lot about human behavior in crisis situations. Sarah's desperation and refusal to follow protocols were understandable on a personal level but dangerous in a situation where everyone's safety was paramount. It was a stark reminder of how stress and fear can lead people to act irrationally, even when their intentions are good. The incident also highlighted the importance of maintaining order during emergencies. The crew's ability to manage the situation, despite the chaos, was impressive and ultimately saved lives. Their professionalism and adherence to safety protocols were crucial in ensuring that everyone made it through safely. A few months after the incident, I received a letter from Sarah. It was an apology. In her letter, she expressed regret for her behavior and acknowledged that her actions had been misguided. She thanked me for standing firm and for helping to ensure that the evacuation process was carried out as smoothly as possible. She also mentioned that her children had been traumatized by the experience but were receiving counseling and support. Reading her letter was a mixed experience. I appreciated her apology and felt sympathy for her situation, but it also reaffirmed my belief that, while empathy is essential, safety protocols must be followed to protect everyone involved. As I look back on the events, I still wonder if I could have handled the situation differently. Could I have offered more support to Sarah without jeopardizing my own safety and the safety of others? Would it have made a difference if I had chosen to switch seats or if I had been more accommodating? Ultimately, I believe that following the established procedures was the right decision. In emergencies, adhering to protocols ensures that the process remains orderly and that everyone has a fair chance at safety. While I understand Sarah's distress, the crew's role in managing the evacuation and the need to maintain order were paramount. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed these Reddit stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.